Well, I think we can learn those skills again, and here in Asia, people do community gardens on the weekend where, there's a lot that's waiting to be built on, and they know it's going to be, let's say, 2 years until they're going to put a building out there. Well, the neighborhood community will take over that lot. Instead of leaving it a bare dirt thing or just field, they will take it over and they will grow vegetables inside there as a community. And people come down on the weekend and they work and they learn new skills. And another thing, after you have an enormous amount of vegetables, you have no idea how much 2 acres will put out for you. I mean, you're talking thousands and thousands of pounds of produce coming out of there. How are you going to store it?
Adapt 2030 Mini Ice Age Conversations covers changes in our climate due to a new and intensifying grand solar minimum. And the media overlooking, downplaying, or burying cold weather changes occurring on our planet. This is in order to keep the global warming agenda steaming full speed ahead. I do this podcast and radio program because we need to begin conversations on how to adapt our food growing strategies long before 2030 as agricultural zones shift, affecting global crop output. But very few mainstream media outlets are talking about the most important issue of our time: cold weather crop losses. Our sun is going through a 400-year cycle, which has effects on our weather patterns as our magnetosphere weakens and the jet streams go out of flow. It's not CO2, it's not you, it's the sun. Are you ready to thrive in the grand solar minimum? Then join me for Mini Ice Age Conversations. I'm your host, David Dubine.
The food supply going to be hit drastically. Give our listeners a flavour of, because some of our listeners are very new to this information and they're very concerned about what the conditions will be like. Okay, it's obviously going to be devastating for food, and we'll come back to that. It's hugely important. But they're worried about themselves and older people. I mean, how cold do we think, David, it might get in the early 2030s? What sort of average temperatures are we looking at? Is it going to be unbearably cold? Will we have kind of Arctic type conditions in the UK? What is it going to look like?
Well, for the UK, you have a perfect blueprint of what has already occurred in history. So what you're looking at is something called the Maunder Minimum that occurred from, say, 1640 to 1710. Now, some of these same rivers obviously are not going to freeze because they've been dredged. It's not about it's going to get so brutally cold that we can't throw another coat on for us in our modern age with all these fabrics we have and all this high tech. We got good windows, better insulation, all these things they did not have in the 17th century. So again, the outcome is going to be different. But one thing that's going to play out exactly the same is the shrinking of the amount of time that you can grow something.
Can grow food. I
mean, look at the potatoes this year, and not only the UK, but over in Europe, they're 30% smaller. And take a look at the wheat reduction in the UK. And Australia also became a net wheat importer this year because they're in a mega drought that's supposed to last for 4 more years. They can't really grow either. But again, that matches right up with what happened in accounts of the Aboriginals in the Maunder Minimum when they had records going back. So we can forecast out based on the past. And again, one of the main things that was talked about so highly was you're going to need to grow your own food to supplement what might not be available in the supermarket. See, this is a great thing because any of us can sprout a seed. Any of us can grow a plant. So it's not an undoable or a Mount Everest that we need to climb for this. It's just a little bit of awareness and then you putting some action behind that awareness. When I went home, we prepped up several hundred pounds of food for long-term food storage. Here I do sprouts. I have an outdoor garden with vertical tubes that I grow, and we're trying to bring it indoors this winter to see how it'll do indoor. But growing your own food, these are simple measures. Opportunity in here, vertical agriculture indoors where it's going to move. How are you going to protect your food as well?
I was just going to say that.
Community gardens.
Yeah. You took the words out of my mouth. I was going to ask you, how are you preparing for it? And then you told me, if the global food production drops to levels that you think it will, and I think you've got a very, I think you're on the money. Well, people are going to want food. It's going to drive people crazy. People are going to be stealing food. I'm guessing you'll need to protect yourself, won't you? Jesus.
If it gets to that point, your ammo is going to be so valuable that you will be able to trade it for food.
And speaking of cycles, my new book with my co-author Bill Porter, Climate Revolution, a must-read for understanding our sun-driven climate. As we progress deeper into this new Eddy grand solar minimum, weather extremes leading to global food scarcity and higher food prices are here now. This book describes the expected changes, how to survive and thrive during future challenging times, and also practical preparations. The entire book is interactive with over 250 links. You can click and go out to the scientific aspect of what we're talking about with the repeating cycles in this grand solar minimum. The science is explained so you understand the mechanisms. The solutions are there because we know we're going to face these exact same problems again that were faced in the Maunder minimum, the Sporer minimum, the Wolf minimum. Find designs for building greenhouses, grow guides, beam soil techniques, as well as bioreactors to create your own growth hormones for the soil. Available now, the new Adapt 2030 Climate Revolution. The link's in the description box below.
You know, and I go back to this one account of, it's called A Year in Hell, and I encourage everybody, please read this account of the Bosnian War, of what they went through and what were the most valuable items. Bleach and ammonia were among the top items that people needed for health. So a gallon of bleach, it would have saved thousands of lives, because people would get a cut on their finger and it would get infected. They would lose their arm. They would get gangrene over a single cut on the fingers that they couldn't disinfect. So hygiene is going to be a number one priority. So again, when you're starting to think about growing your own food, why don't you take the next step to start thinking about your hygiene? Because when things go down, people aren't going to be disposing of their waste properly. And this is where a lot of waterborne bacteria and things come in. What about purifying your own water? And a thing, Year in Hell, again, you know, the streams were running super clean, the rivers were clean, but within 3 days, or let's say a week, the water was so unusable because that's where people were going to the bathroom and throwing it. So the water collection out of that river ceased. So then people were starting to think about, wow, where am I going to get my water now? Because all the pipes got turned off. It was truly, you got to read the accounts. I don't want to be there in my mind. I don't think that way in my mind. I think about rising above, vibrationally above all this chaos where, you know, I'm preparing in advance for these so I could survive through this time, and anybody can do it. If you go to the store and you have an extra 5 or 10 pound, why don't you look at some rice? I mean, you can get a full 25-pound bag of rice for like what? And in the United States, it's $8. Or what about cans, beans? How about tuna fish or any kind of sardines, anything in a can that you can keep for a long time? What about beans? Those are super cheap and you can sprout them. So if you can't actually grow it because it's too cold, you can sprout it in your house and have fresh sprouts that are incredibly dense in micronutrients. But that 25-pound bag of beans in the United States cost me $6 for 25-pound of pinto beans. So think about that. If you have a few extra bucks and you're walking out in the store, buy some. Salt, another one. Salt is a huge commodity during these times. Bleach, go get an extra gallon of bleach if you have a few extra pounds on you. Bleach is still readily available. Handy wipes are still readily available. Toilet paper is still readily available. Garbage plastic bags are still readily available. You can use those as a toilet if you have a 5-gallon bucket. Like 5-gallon buckets, you can go to anywhere and they'll probably give them to you if it's at a store and they have too many of them. People give this stuff away all the time. It's like, get it away. We don't want to pay the recycle fee, so just come and take it for free. Like, you can get a lot of things if you really know what you're looking for, and it's all available now. There's no struggle to get it now. But I assure you, in 2 years, it will be a struggle to get many of these items. And I'm just going to leave it at that. You can prepare and you can be miles ahead of everybody. You still have a little time here.
You're talking about the possibility of like total social collapse. And I'm listening to this and I'm thinking, Jesus, this is very possible. I also think that because of the evolution of us as people, we have become dependent on others and to do things for us that we used to be able to do maybe 2 or 3 generations prior. You know, we used to be able to build, to fix things, to organise things at home. Now, and I'm very guilty of this, David, I find myself needing to get a man in, a contractor, to do something that I know my grandfather would have been able to do because it was knowledge handed down. This technological age of advancement, which I don't really believe is advancing us very much, we're not able to do things. We certainly have, most of us have no idea how to go about growing things, how to tend a crop, even if it's only a small potato crop. We're really not ready for any of this. And like you're saying, governments are going along with the CO2 climate change bullshit, which it is, while you believe they know that we're heading for the Maunder minimum, the grand solar minimum, which is going to really affect global food production and will lead to chaos. I have no doubt about that. Maybe will lead to war, maybe will lead to a total breakdown of the social fabric. And I just don't think people are ready for it. I mean, you talk about stockpiling stuff, and that sounds pretty common sense to me, but all the other things you might need to do, you know, all the maintenance, all that sort of stuff, I think people are in a bad place, David. Do you think I'm being very pessimistic? Do I have a downer on people? Because I don't see people being able to do the things that our granddads used to be able to do. Ordinary things. What do you think?
Well, I think we can learn those skills again, you know, and here in Asia, people do community gardens on the weekend where, you know, there's a lot that's waiting to be built on, and they know it's going to be, let's say, 2 years until they're going to put a building out there. Well, the neighborhood community will take over that lot. Instead of leaving it a bare dirt thing or just field, they will take it over and they will grow vegetables inside there as a community. And people come down on the weekend and they work and they learn new skills. And another thing, after you have an enormous amount of vegetables, you have no idea how much 2 acres will put out for you. I mean, you're talking thousands and thousands of pounds of produce coming out of there. How are you going to store it? Most of us have lost the ability to can foods, because I know my grandparents canned everything. We even had a root cellar. And your grandparents too. They canned everything. But, you know, this is a skill we'll have to learn. Like, how fun would that be, getting together, having a couple pints, learning how to can stuff up out of your garden that you grew yourself, and then the community aspect of that, so you really know people's skills. And then while you're at the community garden, you can trade skills. Literally, you know how to do this. So maybe somebody knows how to repair something, and then you have a better skill set that they don't have. And then it's a way to interact with people to find out the skill sets that people do have, because it's a cohesive amount of people. You're going to get far more skills in there that can overlap and fill in the gaps at the same time of tending food. And then you kind of understand who you can really trust, or who can learn fast, or who does have the skills already, because you want the food growers, you know, right there, right at the time. So if anybody has 30 years skill of growing food in a garden, you rock in day one, you're definitely going to want to stay with those people and learn as much as you can. And if you do ask the questions, they're quite willing to talk to you and learn. And it's a learning process for all of us, because the system has gotten us onto the system. They've pretty much made us, and I'm going to say the media and corporate conglomerates, et cetera, made you forget what our grandparents did, and they've only gotten you, well, food only comes from a supermarket. Oh, the food I grow is not going to be too clean because there might have been a squirrel on it. Oh, a bird pooped on it. I don't want to get that. Ooh, that's dirty food. Clean supermarket food's clean food because we had the USDA inspected. It's so much cleaner than what I can grow in my garden, where there's insects and bird poop and squirrels. Wash it and cook it. Okay, maybe. But anyway, we can relearn everything we need to learn. And it could be really fun in a community environment. And I think this is how most people are going to move forward, is in a community-esque type environment. You're not going to do it by yourself, for sure not.
TrueLeafMarket.com. I really want to talk about growing your own food, which will be a necessity moving forward. There's so many ways that we can go about growing different types of vegetables that we're going to need. You know, microgreens are incredibly nutritious. They're super fast to grow. In less than a week, you can have something that you can eat. Also, sprouts. We can get those a little bit taller, a little more dense, a little bit larger volume on the vegetation mass coming off of there. So how do you know what kind of sprouts to grow? How about wheatgrass or herbs? What about different types of herbs that we can add to our foods? Now, what I just described to you, there's a full range of starter guides there at TrueLeafMarket.com for you to take a look at. Even if it's just for your own knowledge and you don't purchase something from them, at least get the information so you know how to grow microgreens, you know how to grow sprouts, you understand what some of the herbs are for. TrueLeafMarket.com. Use the link below and give yourself the gift of organic and heirloom seeds.
It might be no bad thing for humanity, this, because we're not in a great place at the moment. Adapt 2030 is the YouTube channel for David Dubine, and you can find David at oilseedcrops.org. We've been talking about, we've still got a few minutes, we've been talking about the coming grand solar minimum. You see, the media and climate groups and journalists and everybody wants us to believe that we are creating too much CO2 and that is going to warm the planet and cause catastrophe. That isn't true. What's actually coming, and I do believe this, I believe David is right, and Valentina Zharkova and others, we're going to hit a very cold snap period for a number of years, beginning in the mid part or the latter part of the next decade. That's going to have a profound effect on global food production, and it's going to mean a lot of changes for people. It might mean chaos, it might mean very, very difficult times. David has talked in his videos and on his website about how he believes the global cabal, governments, European Union, they know all this stuff, but they're keeping this hidden from people. And David believes that the evidence is already there because crop yield has been and is on the decline. Really important, this stuff. This is hugely important, this particular subject. Oilseedcrops.org. It sounds to me, though, despite all of this, particularly there in the last couple of minutes, you are optimistic about the better part of human nature. You think we'll get through it, David, and it won't become Mad Max beyond Thunderdome, but that we might become better because of it. People might become better.
Yes and no. But first thing, let me respond to the Extinction Rebellion. Where are your solutions? Yeah. I've written a book on solutions. I've written a book to explain the problem. Half the book's explaining the problem. The other half is for solutions. Extinction Rebellion, where are your solutions? All you do is spout end of the world with no solutions. Why are those people dancing in the street, getting on the tops of the trains? I watched that funny video where they ripped them down. Like, why? I'm such a social justice warrior. How dare you rip me down from the train?
Get off that train.
Come on. Well, why don't you have all those people go plant trees? Because if you were so worried about CO2, have them go plant trees, and each person could probably plant 10 trees on a weekend. So imagine all these millions of people across the world could have planted 100 million trees already. And then, taking care of those trees and learn how to grow some food next to the trees as a shade cover crop or something, instead of just dancing on the streets and belly aching the whole way into existence. Where are your solutions? This is insane that they talk all this problem, but not a single solution. Go clean the ocean. I don't like plastics either. Plastics is a massive problem, but nobody talks about that. And then to the last point here, 5G, this fifth generation internet, this 5G, and John Kitson, Mark Steele, Sasha Stone, Ian Crane, all of the activists and many more over in the UK talking about this 5G. And when I spoke at Ian Crane's Alternative View 10, I was unaware pretty much of 5G because in America, we are just not told what this tech is. And then, once learning about it, the light bulb went on and go, oh, that's it. That's how they're going to do massive crowd control in the cities. Because Mark Steele explained that they can put a carrier wave inside the base frequency that has the same kind of wave that they use on those dishes on top of Humvees for crowd control. That can ride inside the anywhere from 2 gigahertz to 37 gigahertz wave base frequency that 5G is running on, that they can actually take entire parts of a city in a grid and do the same thing with crowd control in a frequency from a laptop behind somewhere. They won't even need troops to do it because you got to realize – they're not going to be enough troops to control the, let's say bottom 10% of earners on any country. I don't care what country you go to. If they can't eat and their food assistance is not enough to cover the basics, some of the food price rises in the modern minimum were 4x up to 7x for the food price increases. Can you imagine if your food rose 7 times? What would you do? What are the lower earners going to do? I mean, they're going to go on the streets because they can't eat. Now, 10% of a country, you're going to have to control that. That's a lot of people, but there's not enough police. You're going to have to think of a different way. So 5G crowd control frequency works for me. And I think that's really the reason that the 2023 date for the installation of 5G in the United States, Canada, the EU, UK, Australia, everything needs to be 2023. Why is that date the same date that we all predict the massive crop losses across the planet to hit for sure? The first famines begin in 2023.
Isn't that amazing now? Because that's right. I've been reading your site and watching your videos. That's right. You say that the first big hit will be in 2023, and it does coincide with 5G. John and his group in Totnes and Devon, it was a wonderful bit of success getting the moratorium on 5G, but the government has countered that by instructing local authorities not to agree to any of these moratoriums. This is really scary stuff, of course, as well. You have been listening to David Dubine, oilseedcrops.org, and it's Adapt 2030 on YouTube. We're only a couple of minutes away from running out of time, but I'm really glad that you're onto this, David. You're a fantastic presenter, by the way. You present it in a stark, realistic way. There's not a lot of hyperbole, which is there isn't any, which is terrific. It's fact based, all of this, and we've got it. Yeah, we've got it coming. It's amazing. While people are being told, the seas will rise, it's going to be too warm, and all the rest of it. This is nonsense. What's really coming is this global cooling period. I believe it's inevitable. Before I heard about the Grand Solar Minimum and all the rest of it, I had been following people like Ian Plimer and others who said that we are still coming out of an ice age and that there would still be cooling periods. And I didn't understand that, but I do understand it now. It's terrifically put together information. Do you get much resistance, David, just before we finish? I mean, because you're, very matter of fact about it, because you're down to earth about it, because you've had your own journey. Do you find much resistance to it, in terms of trying to talk about it, travelling, speaking to people about it? Do you find much resistance from the climate change brigade?
Yes, and now they've organized trolls to come as a troll army to spam boards and try to dissuade the message, But there is the closer you get to the target, the heavier the flack gets. And the professionals well above me, like 50x above me, are like, you're going to go this route. You better mentally prepare for it because you're already in it. And speaking of that, if you listen to this point in the conversation, thank you so much for your time. And I don't want you to believe what I'm saying at all. I really don't. I would like you, or Richie as well, what we're talking about today, please do your own research. It's not about me trying to convince you or convert you. It's about me saying, here's my fact. There's their fact at Extinction Rebellion. I would like you to do your own research and compare with your own open mind what I've said and what facts I've presented comparatively to what they're talking about with runaway this or that. Do your own research. Don't believe me. I don't want you to believe a thing I said today. I want you to try to disprove every fact that I gave today. See, that's a better way to look at it. Try to disprove every fact I gave today, and you will be down a rabbit hole, and by the time you come out the backside, you'll be like, oh, why isn't anybody warning us about this?
That's a brilliant way to end it today, David. Thanks for staying up for us. You said you've a bit of jet lag and you're a late owl or a late night worker anyway. I mean, I am myself, but not as late as you. I do appreciate that. It was a favour of you to do that. I want to just mention again before we run out of time, it's Adapt 2030. If you look for it on YouTube, I will put a link on my Twitter account, and it's oilseedcrops.org. This is real. It's not hyperbole. It's not doom mongering. It's coming, this. Academics like Valentina Zharkova, people like Piers Corbyn, who's been on this programme, they can see this coming. They know it's coming. The government knows it's happening, but they don't want you to know. Thanks to David Dubine and others for raising the alarm on this issue. David, thanks very much. You're welcome back anytime. There will be opportunities, of course, for you to come back, because this is a story that's developing all the time. And when things are happening, you're always welcome back here, my friend. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, thank you. And I'll get up at 3 a.m., 4 a.m. to do a show. It's a 24-hour world, and any time is a good time.
You're a gentleman, David. Thanks so much. David Dubine speaking to us live from Asia on the Richie Allen Show today. Adapt 2030 on YouTube, and the website is oilseedcrops.org. Thanks so much again to David.
This video is brought to you by our friends at TrueLeafMarket.com. Heirloom and organic seeds for any grow zone on our planet.